All right, let's talk about the Brendan Shanahan era in Toronto. It's over after 11 years. So over a decade of highs. Well, not really. There were some. More lows, definitely. And plenty of frustration. This is a guy who came in with a vision and a dream that he ultimately didn't make come true. And I want to go over his successes and failures over the 11 years with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But before I do that, I want you to understand that I understand how difficult it is to be a president or a GM in the NHL. I've never been one, but it's a thankless job, especially if you want to deliver a Stanley Cup to that franchise and you don't do it in your time there. There's been a lot of GMs and current GMs and presidents who've been in their role for a long time who've never really had that type of success. So you have to think about it. Only one team out of 32 every single season, well, 31, 30, 29, as far back as you want to go, only one team out of all these teams every single season lift a Stanley Cup. It's a tough thing to do. And there are current GMs who have been with their clubs a lot longer than Brendan Shanahan who haven't had that success, and they want to bring that success to their club. A couple of examples. Kevin Cheveldayoff of the Winnipeg Jets. He's been there since 2011, 14 years. The Jets have been to the conference finals one time. And this is not me taking shots at the Jets or criticizing them. It's just I'm showing you how difficult it is to win the damn thing. Jim Nill of the Dallas Stars, relatively successful. He's been there for, 12 years? He lost in a final in 2020, and they've been in the conference finals for 3 straight years. And they might get out of this current conference finals and potentially win a Stanley Cup, so that can all change. But it's taken them a long time to even sniff the Stanley Cup. Don Sweeney in Boston, 10 years. I think he just signed another long-term contract. He took his team to the final, lost in 2019, missed the playoffs just 3 times, and now they're in a rebuild/retool, a position that the Leafs aren't in. So Shanahan is actually leaving this organization in a better place than he found it. Before he got there, in the 9 seasons prior, they missed the playoffs 8 times. And he comes in and he steadies the ship. He does some good things with the alumni and retiring numbers and all of that. And his team has been in the postseason 9 straight times. Now, they didn't get to the promised land. Not one time. They didn't even really sniff it. The furthest they got under Shanahan was Game 7 in the second round, which they were just eliminated from by the Florida Panthers. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I understand how difficult his job was. Nonetheless, I think when you look back on the Shanahan era, it's a failure. The painful truth is that they have a 2-9 postseason record under Shanahan. They've lost 7 straight winner-take-all games, and they scored 1 goal in 5 straight Game 7s. 1. And that's not all his fault. It's not, right? He had a ton of faith in his players, and I'll get to those players, the core 4. And those players and everybody around them, on the ice, coaches included, assistant coaches, the whole 9, weren't able to deliver. A series that comes to mind immediately was back in 2021. They had a 3-1 series lead on the Montreal Canadiens, their biggest rival. Doesn't get any bigger than that. Leafs Habs. They were up 3-1 in that series. Heavily favored to win that series. Should have won that series. It was a monumental collapse. The Habs came back and won that thing and went on a magical run. Still, 3-1 to the Habs in the playoffs, and you blow that lead. You would think after that, it was curtains. See you, Brendan Shanahan. See you, maybe 1 or 2 pieces of the core 4. Didn't happen. Stuck around. I'll also add their most recent series against Florida as a failure. Because, yes, they were up 2-0, and Florida's a really good team, and they're making Carolina look like boys. It's men against boys in the conference finals right now. But the Leafs were up 2-0 in that series. They go to Game 3. They have a 3-1 lead, and they blow that lead in overtime. And then their performances in Game 5 at home and Game 7 were 2 of the worst performances I've seen a team play at home in the playoffs ever. And that's saying a lot for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is a team, like I said, that blew a 3-1 lead to the Montreal Canadiens. Lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Lost basically every Game 7 they've ever been in. To me, those 2 performances, obviously the last one in Game 7 was a death knell. It was the nail in the coffin for Brendan Shanahan. But that one has to stand out because if you get through that series, which was not a guarantee even if they did win Game 3, I mean, out of any team to blow a 3-0 lead, it'd probably be the Leafs. but they would have put themselves in a pretty good position to qualify for the conference finals against the Carolina Hurricanes. And based on the way the Canes are playing and how the Leafs would match up with them, they'd have a pretty good shot of going to the Stanley Cup final. They would at least be favorites in that series. And out of all the teams remaining, out of the 5 teams remaining, they were the number 1 seed. So they would have had home ice the rest of the way. But they couldn't do it. They blew it. And that's just basically the motto of the Leafs under Shanahan for quite some time. They blew it. Again, quick break. If you're enjoying this video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. And if you like it, hit that like button as well. Besides postseason failures, and spare me with during the Atlantic Division, it's difficult. Go look at the Central, the Pacific, and the West. Okay? Like, it's going to be difficult. That's hockey. It's hard. Hockey is hard, especially in the playoffs. Doesn't matter who you play. Yes, they played some top teams. Bruins, Tampa, Florida. Okay, sure, why not? But it's difficult for every other team too. The Oilers got to go through the Kings and Vegas and Dallas every single year. That's not hard. It's a difficult path. At least the Leafs would get one Metro team if they went to the conference final, right? The Metro's horrible. God. Letting Zach Hyman walk for nothing? Woo, that's up there. That's up there with the Leafs blowing that 3-1 lead to the Montreal Canadiens. He goes and ends up signing with the Edmonton Oilers a 7-year deal at 5.5 per. Leafs couldn't swing that for Zach Hyman. Guy scored 54 goals in one season, went to the Cup Finals. He's turning into a playoff performer, adapting and adjusting his game to the way that teams play, successful teams play in the Stanley Cup Finals. At the moment of recording this, he leads the entire playoffs in hits. And he could score goals. And he's on the #1 power play. Leafs could use that type of guy, but no, gone. Nazem Kadri, same thing. They traded this guy to Colorado. They were upset with him because he kept getting suspended in the playoffs. I understand it, but out of, I don't know how many players I can name, he's one player that actually wanted to be here. He wanted to be a Leaf. And they got rid of him. They traded him to Colorado for Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot. Gosh, not a great trade. Just not a great trade. And obviously Kadri goes on to win a Stanley Cup with Colorado. And he wasn't the sole reason why they won a cup, okay? He was, what, 4th, right, on the pecking order? McKinnon, Makar, Rantanen, and then probably Kadri. Landeskog was there, so maybe 5th. Yeah, maybe 5th. But still, he was an important player for Colorado. He was an important player for Toronto. But they got rid of him. So another blemish on Shanahan's record. And then you got some I didn't even get to the core 4 yet, but you got some questionable contracts. And this is one that isn't brought up enough. And oh my God, this one drives me crazy. David Kampf. They signed David Kampf to a 4-year deal worth $9.6 million. But here's the kicker. They gave him a modified no-trade clause. Why does a 4th liner, first of all, need a 4-year deal worth 9.6? Don't understand that. Doesn't even score goals, provides 0 offense. Okay, he's good on PKs and winning faceoffs from time to time. And defensively, whatever. You don't really have to worry about him that much. But still, 4 years, 9.6, and you give him a modified no trade? That is like the Shanahan calling card for giving players whatever they want. That leads me into the core 4, right? Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Austin Matthews. I'll leave out John Tavares because they signed John Tavares as a free agent. They gave him all the money in the world. Maybe he is in there. But he was maybe the biggest free agent over the past, 20 years up until this free agency when Mitch Marner hits the market. So I'll give him a pass on that. I understand going after the big fish, and they got the big fish. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and William Nylander got exactly what they wanted. The amount of money they wanted, the term that they wanted, no moves, no trades. God knows what else is in those contracts. It's like the Leafs had no leverage. 0. What do you guys want? Oh, you're threatening to leave? Here you go. I'll sign that for you. Oh, you're going to not show up to training camp? Oh, listen, we don't want this to go on anymore. How much money? Here's a blank check. How many years do you want? How much money do you want? And good on those players for getting those contracts and that type of money. But Shanahan, let's just say he's not a master negotiator. Him and Dubas and whoever else was involved in that. But when we look back at the Shanahan era, you're looking at the core 4, and he had blind faith that those 4 players, the core 4, would take him to where he wanted to go, would bring this team a Stanley Cup. And those players didn't repay the faith. Not one bit, because they didn't show up when they needed to show up. In big games, game 7s, second rounds. They just couldn't do it. And they handcuffed the club. right? You can't have any cap creativity when you lock up 4 players at 10 million each, 10 million plus each. What are you supposed to do with the rest of your roster, right? It's just moving pieces around in the bottom 6, trying to find a winger for Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner to play with, trying to find, a winger for the second line, trying to find centers and cheap defensemen and cheap goaltending. And it's all led to this. It's all led to today. 0 success when the success meter is a Stanley Cup, or at least getting there. They haven't even got there. I mentioned Jim Nill and Don Sweeney. They got there. They lost, but they got there. Shovel day off. At least he's been to the conference finals with Winnipeg. Shanahan can't say the same. Game 7 of the second round. That's their peak under Shanahan. And it wasn't just failures. I got to give props to what he's done in the regular season. And some people may scoff at that and be like, who cares about the regular season? But there's a lot of teams in the NHL who would love the regular season success that the Leafs have had. That is for sure. Look at this. 5 100-point seasons. Making the playoffs 9 straight times. Winning an Atlantic Division, which they did this past season under Craig Berube. You got to give him his props for that because he built a team that was able to have a ton of success in the regular season and make the playoffs. And the ownership, they'll look at that and be like, well, that's making money for us. That's, in a way, it's successful, right? You're putting money in pockets. The more games you play in the playoffs, obviously, the more money you make. But they were there every single year. And not only that, off the ice, he reinvigorated the brand. He built Legends Row in front of the stadium, in front of Scotiabank Arena, honoring some of those players. He retired a bunch of numbers. He made sure the alumni was welcomed back with the team and in and around the team, and gave out alumni jackets and provided their own box. And that stuff is very important. He saw that in Detroit and he wanted to replicate that in Toronto, and he did. I mean, for most fans, they honestly probably don't care about that much. Obviously, they want their heroes remembered, but it's all about what happens on the ice. And he wasn't able to do that. And clearly there was success in the draft, right? And back-to-back years, you draft Nylander, Marner, Austin Matthews, right? You get lucky along the way. But I mean, outside of the top 10, this is me kind of throwing shade at the guy, but outside of the top 10, they never hit on draft picks, right? So how would we sum up the Shanahan era? Built a really successful, great regular season team that was never able to translate that success into the playoffs. And he showed an incredible amount of faith to 4 players that he believed were able to bring a Stanley Cup to Toronto for the first time since 1967. And like I said, they never repaid that faith. And he never veered from the direction he wanted to go. These are my guys. This is what I want to do. This is how much I want to pay them because they're going to get it done in the end. And when you have that type of blind faith and trust in players that don't return that, you end up with what he's got, right? You end up with what happened here. 11 years, 2-9 in the postseason. Couldn't get it done in a Game 7. Couldn't make the conference finals. Didn't even sniff the Stanley Cup finals. And now here we are. And now it seems to be the tree-living Craig Berube era for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have a short window to win a Stanley Cup. Maybe about 3 to 4 years. Maybe even less than that. Let's see what they do.